So I just wanted to bring up a topic that I think has come up quite a bit, which is what is the right number of touches? What is the right volume of information to get out in terms of lead generation, right? If you're a rep or a team of reps and you want to make sure that you fill your pipeline, how many touches should you be providing out into the marketplace in order to ensure that your pipeline is full? This question came about. I was recently doing a session out in Virginia, and one of the reps came up to me afterwards and asked me this question in various forms. It comes this way, that they want to know how many times you need to touch someone in order to generate enough traction to get leads for your pipeline. How many times should you be making calls? How many times should you be doing phone calls during the week? And I hate to give this answer. It really is one of those things that's like a cop-out, but it just depends. It's very difficult to say exactly what the right number of touches for you. But I've heard this said about talent versus hard work, is that consistency trumps talent any day. The biggest thing about lead generation efforts is consistency, making sure that you actually have a steady rhythm of outbound touches, because the person who consistently does the most daily and weekly work on a regular basis will outpace the overall number of touches from people who work in these big sprints. This is why I made a post a few weeks back about finding your true airspeed. What is the actual number of touches that you can do on a regular basis consistently, week over week, month over month, so that you can make those same number of touches every single time? This isn't only important for your traditional outbound, but this is the same for social media as well. If you're trying to get a presence out here and groom these algorithms to promote your information, what can you do on a regular basis without fail to make sure that the algorithm knows that you are putting that out there, and more importantly, that your people know what to expect, when to tune in, what they can see coming from you on a regular basis, so that you have that brand consistency. Now, back to the question, right? How many touches or how many hours or numbers of outbound emails and phone calls should you be making? The biggest thing is making sure that you break it up into blocks of time that you can dedicate. As we've trained another company over the past year, we had a year-long curriculum to train their sales team. We talked about working on your weekly, daily, and monthly operating rhythm to ensure that you save 2 sacred hours out of every day, or a few sacred hours out of every week, that you can always go back to for lead generation. This is where you're going to do the difficult, challenging work of cold calling or making those outbound touches to people who are not looking for your products or services. Now, if you're in an area that doesn't really thrive on cold calling, if you sell, let's say, nuclear particle accelerators, there's not a lot of people who are out there cold calling to talk to teams of nuclear professionals about how to buy your latest particle accelerator. I can fit any number of industries or situations where cold calling is not a staple of how you really generate the most lucrative leads. However, whatever your least comfortable outbound activity might be, it's your medicine, right? And just as you need to take your medicine on a regular basis at a certain time, you want to find a time in your week that is your dedicated time for doing your outbound. You want to set some time where you know that on every Monday, every Wednesday, and every Friday, from 8 o'clock till 10, I'm going to be reaching out to my outbound prospects. The way you start that is to make sure you get your targets listed, so that you're not spending time during those sacred hours preparing for finding who you want to reach. That means your preparation time of looking at what your ideal customer profiles are for specific offerings or scenarios that are going on in your territory or your industry or your region. Maybe there was a new regulation for what your ideal clients have to deal with. And with that regulation change, there's something specific you want to speak to about what you offer for a certain client. Maybe it's a certain size of company or a certain profile of these types of clients. You want to go ahead and build that contact list in advance. So you've got your time set aside as to when you're going to start to burn through that list. So that when that time hits, Monday, 8 a.m., there's a list of phone numbers, contacts, and you already have your talking points planned out with some sort of a roadmap as to what you want to talk about and what you specifically want to offer. When we're dealing with the clients we serve at Aslan Training, when we meet an Aslan Training client and we come to them and we talk about how to actually generate those outbound opportunities, it's always about making sure you have some sort of a value proposition, some positioning statement that's developed in advance for a specific profile. I suggest that if you're going to do these continuous efforts of outbound activity, that you build that around campaigns for one specific ideal customer profile with a certain value proposition for a certain topic at one block of time. So if it's for this month or this week that you're going to run this specific messaging to this specific client, make sure that when you hit that time, 8 a.m., Monday morning, Wednesday morning, and Friday morning, that you're going to have all that information already in front of you to start your outbound. And as you send your emails, make your phone calls, there's no change for that block of time. This keeps your mind fresh. It keeps your mind ready to go. So you're not trying to switch in between one client or the other during that outbound call time. So that as you're on that phone, you're consistently making the same types of conversations happen over and over again. And as you get those reps up over and over again, you'll start to refine what you say. You'll get instantaneous feedback as to what verbiage and what situations are most lucrative or most productive for you. So you can optimize that time. After you do this for 1 week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, the next week you come back to that exact same scenario of this ideal client profile, for this verbiage, for this specific topic, you're going to be better at how you say it. And your efficiency will go up consistently. Now, if you have multiple different client spaces you want to try to serve from the same desk in the same period of time, just pick a specific day for that specific outreach. Now, when you're doing this outbound, the most important thing about any outbound activity, whether it's cold calling or even networking, if you're the type of person like a legal professional that meets people out and about, all you financial planners, I'm talking about you. You want to have a time set after your outbound activity, like a networking event, gala, that you're going to sit down at this time of day and go through all of the contacts that you met the following day. And that is your solid block of time that's dedicated in your personal operating rhythm that I'm going to do my follow-up. When you start to do a long list of outbound touches, you're going to get lots of follow-up activities that are generated, whether it's sending an email to a few people or scheduling times where you want to talk to those people who are ready to talk right now. You've got to have a set time in your schedule after the block of outbound calls to do your follow-up. Because without the follow-up, all the touches, all the outbound is pretty much worthless. If you're a manager thinking about this management activity, then you want to recognize that A, the outbound activities themselves, especially the ones that are most emotionally taxing or require the most effort, are the things you need to measure and the things you need to manage by making sure you speak to people about when and how they're doing these touches. And if you fail to actually monitor, track, and manage the follow-up, then all the outbound won't matter. If they're forgetting to do the actual steps, if the team members are forgetting to do the actual steps, to follow up on all the effort of the outbound they made. So you've got 3 blocks of time you've got to protect. Number 1 is the prep time, before you sit down and hit the phones or the emails for your outbound activities on a daily, weekly basis. Number 2 is the time to actually do those touches. And last but not least, set times for follow-up. And just pick a level, a pace that you can actually operate at every single time. Whatever periods you want to monitor, whether it's weeks or months, make sure that you actually know what you can sustain. Because doing 10 calls per Monday, Wednesday, or Friday, or 10 calls per month, if that's what your pace happens to be, make sure that your outbound activity is something that works for you so you find that true airspeed. People who do these big sprints, these big bursts of calling hundreds and hundreds of people, they do two things. Number one, the effort of that outbound activity of making 100 calls in one given sitting, it just becomes too cumbersome for them to do over and over again. And natural human nature from that level of effort, they start to shy away from it because the effort is too high. Now, with enough reps, you do start to get stronger. That becomes easier. You get better. So yes, you want to stretch yourself. You don't want to pick some times or some amounts that are just so small that there's no effort required. You probably can actually do that 10% more than you feel is just average, comfortable. But if you can pick something that is sustainable and manageable, then you don't have that fatigue from the effort itself. The other thing that happens from these huge pushes of activity, where you're making hundreds and hundreds of calls, is that you now backlog all of this follow-up work that is also difficult to manage. And most reps wind up getting lost, especially when you start to get a hot one that requires a lot of time. If you have complex enterprise sales that require you to talk to multiple people, the sales cycle requires a lot of research and emails and demos. As you start to work with one great client that's going to generate a huge percentage of your quarterly number, you start to get distracted from those outbound activities. And once you get into that trap of going down the rabbit hole for the active opportunities, the amount of follow-up is going to be the thing that trips you up and keeps you from getting back to the phone, not just the effort. As you get stronger, you love hitting the phone. You love having those conversations. It gets exciting when it's time to make those outbound dials. But the follow-up and the work that's required as you get new opportunities into your active daily workflow is going to cause you to back off of that outbound dialing information. And why do I say that? Because I spent most of my time as that frontline rep, feeling that pressure and having those huge swells of multiple great opportunities that you're working. And not only just the time you got to spend with your client, but the bigger and more important the deal is to your quarter, the more time you spend talking to your leadership to discuss it and build it and bring in resources to support it. The closer you get to the finish line, the more time you're spending with proposals and all the work to finish these opportunities up. And that administrative backlog starts to pull away from the energy you want to spend in outbound activity. Summon it back up. Make sure you find out what your true airspeed is. What is it that you can sustain on a weekly or monthly basis every single time, so that you know that you're able to keep it up, because consistency will always trump big bursts of activity. So all that to say, there is no magic number. There's no magic number of how many dials that you need to make on a given week. It could change from one quarter to the next based on what's going on in your environment or circumstances that come up, that you might have a new wave of clients because you entered into a new market or a new product space, or there's some new change in the circumstances of your region. So make sure that you just think about where you fit these calls into your daily workflow so you get that sacred time to dedicate on a regular basis. I hope that's helpful. We'll give a lot more detailed information here on the YouTube channel going forward. If you've got questions, go ahead, send us a message, jason@salessynergistics.com, or reach out to us at salessynergistics.com to ask any questions you want. Love to see your comments here in the LinkedIn post and the YouTube post below. And we'll keep this up on a regular basis. You have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye.